Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I would like to give you my first impressions on the new FAQ that was released today. That's right, the new FAQ is here and I've already read through it once and boy is it a good one. I feel like every change that was made is great and is going to help the balance of Warhammer 40k. So I know you guys are probably as excited as I am, so let's dive right into it. In the last big FAQ, we were introduced to a few beta rules, which have all now been fully implemented as rules in the game, with a couple of them having minor changes. The Battle Brothers rule that states that you can't have detachments using the keywords Chaos, Imperium, Inari, or Tyranids, which basically killed soup detachments, is still a thing. Meaning you can't have Astra Militarum units in the same detachment as Ultramarine units, but you can still have an Imperium army as long as your Astra Militarum units are in their own detachment and your Ultramarine units are in their own detachment as well. There are no changes to this rule, which I am happy about. I know a decent amount of people were complaining about quote-unquote soup armies and wanted them changed, but to be honest I don't feel like that was needed with the way Warhammer 40k 8th edition is designed. To explain myself, let's talk a bit about the phrase soup armies and how I feel about it. And personally, I think we need to kill that phrase because it doesn't make sense and here's why I feel that way. Almost everyone who plays the game is under the impression that each codex is its own army, and to a certain extent that is the case. But the game is balanced around using allies, and I have my reasons for why I feel that way. First, let me state that there are technically only 7 factions or armies in the game, and those are Imperium, Chaos, Eldari, Necrons, Tau, Orcs, and Tyranids. I know some of you might hate that idea, but it's the truth. I feel like Games Workshop intended it to be this way, otherwise why are there so many rules for units that affect those factions? For example, why does Guilliman have a rule to give +1 advance to Imperium units and also allow Imperium units to reroll ones to hit? Why do the Custodes have a banner that gives Imperium units an invulnerable save? Why does Celestine have an ability that gives Imperium units an invulnerable save? Why does Abaddon make all Heretic Astartes within 12 inches fearless? There are more examples of this, but I'll stop there to keep it brief and because I think you get the point. I think it's safe to say it's because Games Workshop always intended for those 7 factions to be the way you play the game. Think of each Imperium army codex, and combine them to look like the Dark Eldar codex. You have your Marine sub-factions, and your AdMech sub-factions, your Guard sub-factions, and so on. But overall, they are all Imperium and can work off of each other, just like the Drukhari codex has Cabals, Cults, and Covens, and how they work with each other. I also feel like there are many other reasons for why allies still exist, and why they will always exist, but I'll leave it here since this video isn't about allies and what people call soup armies. Which, by the way, I have started to hate that term and I'm no longer going to use it because I've come to terms with the fact that those 7 factions I mentioned earlier are the only true factions in the game, at least when it comes to competitive. If you want to hear more about this and why I feel that Games Workshop designed the game this way, that Imperium armies and Chaos armies would all play together as one big faction, then I will make another video dedicated to that topic. But for now, let's stop wasting time and get back to the main content of this video and talk about the other FAQ changes. Psychic Focus, which was the beta rule that made Smite go up in warp charge value each time you casted it to make it harder to cast for each consecutive Smite, is now a fully implemented rule with no changes. So Thousand Suns Smite spam is still a thing, since Thousand Suns and Grey Knights are still exempt from this change, and to be honest, I am fine with that. The army and strategy is counterable, so I feel it's fine. You can counter Smite spam because Smite has to go off on the nearest target, so if you have a good list with enough cheap bodies, you can basically force the Thousand Suns or Grey Knight player to only be able to smite cheap chaff units, so their smites don't get nearly as much value as they should. Smite also isn't that great against hordes, so horde armies still straight up counter Smite spam. So again, it has its counters and I feel like it's fine. The only change I would have liked to see from this is for Grey Knight characters to also get regular smites like Thousand Sun characters to bring them more in line with their Chaos counterparts. Maybe a change like that might happen in the future, but for now, things stay the same when it comes to this rule. Targeting characters with shooting attacks is still the same. You can't target a character unless they are the closest model. Not the closest visible model, but the closest model. I think this change is kind of wonky, but it was the easiest way to fix the loophole of units like Basilisks sniping characters because they couldn't see any other unit, so technically they could shoot whatever they wanted. So again, I like this change. We've been using this rule for months and I like it, and I'm glad it's now fully implemented. Now let's get into some of the new changes. So tactical reserves have been changed again. In the last big FAQ, Games Workshop made it so that you couldn't don't deep strike outside of your deployment zone until turn 2 or 3, but you could still deep strike in your own deployment zone on turn 1. This allowed for some shenanigans like hiding good shooting units in deep strike to ensure they don't take damage in case you don't get to go first, and then deep striking them in your deployment zone when it's your turn to get full use out of them. The most popular use of this tactic was with Dark Eldar and Ravagers. You could use the stratagem to deep strike all 3 of your Ravagers on turn 1 so that they were immune from damage if you didn't get first turn, and then you'd get full use out of them on your turn. Now the rule has been changed to no deep striking at all on turn 1. This does not include units that started on the board though, so stuff like Grey Knights with Gate of Infinity or Orcs with the jump spells are still possible on turn 1. But stuff that goes in the tactical reserve, so basically stuff that goes in the quote-unquote deep strike and is off the table, can only come on the board on turn 2 or 3. I like this change a lot because it gets rid of the shenanigans some armies can pull off, like the Dark Eldar tactic I just mentioned. Like the last big FAQ though, I've already seen some people on Reddit complaining that this hurts melee deep strike armies like Blood Angels, which it does, but it also doesn't. Blood Angels can come in on turn 2 for their deep strikes and still hit pretty hard, and it gives you first turn to shoot down the enemy screen so your deep strikers can get better targets instead of charging headfirst into a screen of 10 cultists or guardsmen. Think of it like chess. You don't want your rook to take out a pawn, only to die to another pawn on the next turn. So kill the pawn with your pawns in order to clear the way for your rook and kill their queen. It's trading units efficiently. So again, I feel like this is fine, and I actually like this change. But that's not the only change to this rule. They also changed reserves so that half of your points have to be on the board instead of half of your power level, and I think this was a great change because no one in match play uses power level, and also I personally feel like power levels aren't completely balanced, at least when compared to points. And then to go along with this change, a lot of infiltrating stuff got changed. For example, the Alpha Legion infiltrating strat no longer lets you infiltrate before the game begins. Well, it does, but in a different way. You now move one of your units that is deployed an extra 9 inches forward, so it's like the Death Company stratagem that Blood Angels have now. Rangers from Craftworld Eldar, the Raven Guard stratagem, the Stygies stratagem, all of them were all changed, so infiltrating as it used to be is no longer the case. Even though this hurts 2 of the armies I play, I really like this change. It never felt fair being able to deploy my guys based off of who went first or second, and there was little risk to infiltrating your guys that way. Now it's much more balanced, and it hurt gimmicky Alpha Strike combos that I don't think very many people enjoyed playing against anyways, like the Cultist Bomb for example. So with this change, Cultist Bombs are no longer a thing. And that's it for the old beta rules that are now fully implemented as rules. So let's now talk about the new beta rules, which I have to say right now I'm extremely excited about. There is a new stratagem called Prepared Positions. This is only allowed to be used by the player who is going second. It's 2 command points, and it states, use this stratagem at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins. Until the end of the first turn, all units from your army that are wholly within your deployment zone other than Titanic units receive the benefit of cover even while they are not entirely on or in a terrain feature. A unit that is already receiving the benefit of cover gains no additional benefit for this stratagem. So basically, if you're going second, you can get the night fighting rule for your army, which was a rule in 7th edition which helped mitigate damage on turn 1 to slow the game down a bit so people wouldn't be tabled by turn 2 against heavily shooting armies. I think this was a much needed change because against some armies on some tables that didn't have a lot of line of sight blocking terrain, you can lose a good chunk of your army on turn 1 and pretty much lose the game. Now when you're in that situation, you can use this stratagem to help mitigate the damage suffered from not going first. Personally, I feel like this is a great addition to the game that should help stop alpha strikes and getting tabled early on. The second new addition to the game is a rule called Tactical Restraint, and this touches up on the command point battery, and it states, there are several warlord traits, relics, and abilities that give you a chance to gain or refund command points when you or your opponent either use a stratagem or spend command points to use a stratagem. In match play games, each player can only gain or have refunded a total of 1 command point per battle round as a result of such rules, regardless of the source. So basically, you can only gain 1 command point altogether per battle round. This is an amazing change and will definitely hurt the command point battery from Guard, especially when they try to combine it with Blood Angels to get the super command point battery because of the Blood Angels relic. With that said, I still believe bringing Guard in an Imperium army is a must because they still offer a lot of things needed for an efficient competitive list. It's just now that the Loyal 32 isn't giving you a bunch of stuff, it's just giving you some bodies and a couple free command points. It's not giving you a super huge command point battery that's going to alter the game in such a way that you're never going to run out of command points, which was too big of a benefit for a detachment that only costs 180 points. So now, with that detachment only being able to gain 1 command point per turn, I can actually see some people looking up other Warlord traits and relics from the Astra Militarum army. Because personally, I don't even know what the other relics or Warlord traits do because no one's ever used them. So now with this change, you might actually see some different Warlord traits and stuff, and when you see the Loyal 32, they might not be the Warlord anymore, and now you can actually have the Warlord from the main part of your faction. So say if you're playing like Grey Knights with Astra Militarum, you can actually have a Grey Knight Warlord now without feeling too bad about it, because you're not losing out on the best command point battery that ever existed, because it doesn't exist anymore. This change, alongside some other changes, should really hurt the new Astra Militarum, Blood Angel, and Imperial Knight list that dominated Nova. It doesn't completely kill the list, but it does take away a lot of its power, which is something the community really wanted. So I think Games Workshop nailed it on the head with this change, alongside other changes I'm about to mention. There are a few more changes as well. Some stratagems have increased in points because Games Workshop felt they were too strong for the amount of command points that they originally costed. For Blood Angels, the stratagem Upon Wings of Fire is now 2 command points. This is the stratagem that allows you to redeploy a jump pack unit as if it deep striked. And yes, this could be used on turn 1, and this is probably one of the reasons they made this change. Also because it's extremely powerful to be able to teleport a jump pack unit across the board, and then use another stratagem to give them a 3d6 charge to follow it up. For Imperial Knights, Oathbreaker Guidance System has been changed to 3 command points. This is the stratagem that allowed your missiles from your Castellan to target characters despite the character rule. This needed to go up because it was abused super hard by the new Knight list at Nova. And then again, Imperial Knights, we have Order of Companions, and this went up to 3 command points. This stratagem allows a House Raven Knight to reroll 1s to hit, 1s to wound, and 1s for damage rolls. This stratagem has an insane value even after the increase in points. This stratagem was also heavily abused by the Castellan list that dominated Nova, so it makes sense that they would change it. And then again we have Imperial Knights with Our Darkest Hour, which is now 3 command points. This is the stratagem that allows a House Tyrannus Knight to get back up from the dead like Guilliman does, which is also an extremely powerful stratagem, especially when combined with the stratagem that allows your Knight to shoot or fight at their full skill, even though they only have a few wounds left. This makes that combo harder alongside other combos from Knights, so I like this change as well. And then, everyone was expecting it, Agents of Vect got changed. It is now 4 command points. I personally thought this stratagem was going to be changed to once per game, but at 4 command points, it basically is once per game now anyways. Personally, thinking about it with how I play my own Dark Eldar list, I only think I would ever activate this once a game now, unless I'm going up against something that I really know I need to hit 2 stratagems in order to gain a massive advantage. But more often than not, I'd probably end up using this once a game, or maybe even not at all now, because 4 command points is pretty hefty. Also, note that the Agents of X stratagem has received an errata. This stratagem cannot be used if there are no Cabal of the Blackheart units from your army on the battlefield, and cannot be used to affect stratagems used before the battle or during deployment. This means if someone brought a patrol of Blackheart to use the stratagem, if you kill the patrol detachment, they can't use the stratagem anymore. Of course, they can hide their Archon and Cabalites to stop this from happening, but at least there's a bit of counterplay to it. And also, they can't hide them in a vehicle, because that technically doesn't count as being on the board. So they have to hide their guys inside of a ruin or something, which you can get to depending on how your list is and how mobile it is. And that covers it for the big changes from the FAQ. There are more changes that can be found in army-specific FAQs. For example, Necrons got some much-needed love, so check out the Necrons FAQ for more info on that. But anyways, that's it for the coverage of the new FAQ. Overall, I'm extremely happy with the direction they went in, and I think this will definitely spice up the meta a bit. Although, I don't really think it will be as big of a change as it was from the first FAQ, but only time will tell and we will have to see. But it does, I can tell you one thing for sure, that the Knight list that dominated Nova, I don't think it's completely dead. I just don't think it's going to be nearly as good as it was at Nova with all the changes we've seen in this FAQ. Anyways, this video was sponsored by themagnetbaron.com. They offer magnets of all sizes, magnetized movement trays, magnetized flight stands, and they even offer fully built magnetized models, all for a great price. So if you're looking at getting some magnets for your hobby needs, then check out themagnetbaron.com. Also, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content. If you want to support the channel even further, you can do so on Patreon. A pledge of $5 gets you access to the Almost Pro Gaming Discord channel that has over 100 members who love 40k just as much as you do. And it also gives you access to basic coaching and list building from myself. It's also the best way to support the channel to allow me to continue making videos full time. So anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Whether you like these changes, whether you hate them, I would really love to know your opinions on this. So please leave some comments down below. I read all of my comments still. I might not respond to all of them, but I still read all of them. So I would love to know your thoughts on all of this stuff. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one, and happy wargaming.